Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're heading over to County Wexford, Ireland. We're looking at a place absolutely steeped in history and, well, maybe some ghosts too. Loftus Hall.
That's right. We've gathered quite a bit of material, historical records, local stories, to really dig into this fascinating spot.
Yeah, our plan is to trace its story, from the very early days right up to how people see it now, its place in pop culture even.
Yeah,
We want to unpack all those layers for you.
exactly. We'll cover the solid history, who owned it when, the big events, the building itself, but also weave in the folklore that's just as much a part of its identity.
We know you want the interesting stuff, the surprising facts, without getting bogged down, so that's what this deep dive is all about.
We'll connect the dots from Redmond Hall through all the ups and downs to the Loftus Hall known today. Hopefully we'll uncover some things that make you go,
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The land itself. It had history before the Loftus name was attached, right? We're talking way back.
Oh, absolutely. Around 1170, after the Normans landed nearby at Baginbun, Raymond Fitzgerald built something called Houseland Castle there.
Houseland Castle. Okay, so not the building we think of today.
No. That original castle eventually made way for Redmond's Hall. That was built much later, maybe around 1350. Interestingly, right around the time of the Black Death.
Wow. So the Redmond family, they were the significant owners for a long time then.
Yeah, for centuries. And Redmond's Hall wasn't just some quiet country house. It found itself right in the middle of things.
Like the Irish Confederate Wars in the 1600s, that seems like a major period for the hall.
A huge period. It was apparently a key landmark for the Irish garrison nearby at Duncannon. And the owner, Alexander Redmond, well, the story goes he was sympathetic to the Confederate rebels.
Which probably didn't sit well with the other side.
Not at all. Seems he might have even given them some help, which definitely got him noticed by the English parliamentarian forces, the Irish Army, as they were sometimes called then.
And that led to an attack.
It did. In 1642, a Captain Aston showed up with about 90 soldiers and even some small cannons to attack Redmond's Hall.
90 soldiers. How did Redmond handle that?
Well, picture this. Alexander Redmond, apparently 68 years old at the time, holes up inside with just a small group. His sons, some tenants, even a tailor who was just there working.
A tailor? Seriously, what did they fight with?
Long-barreled fowling pieces, basically hunting guns. Sounds pretty desperate, doesn't it?
Absolutely, like something out of a movie. Did Aston just storm the place?
He tried. But the cannons, they didn't do much damage to the walls. And then things got worse for Aston. A load of his men apparently just took off to go looting instead.
Oh, brilliant. So, chaos.
Total chaos. And then to top it off, a sea mist rolled in, and under its cover, some Confederate rebels arrived and surprised Aston's remaining troops.
So the attack completely failed.
Utterly failed. Aston himself was killed, and quite a few of his soldiers were captured. A real turnaround.
A victory for Redmond then, but sounds like it had a dark side too. Something about prisoners.
Yes, the aftermath wasn't pretty. The accounts say the Confederate forces hanged the prisoners they took. Grim times.
And that wasn't the end of the fighting for the Redmonds, was it? Cromwell came later?
That's right. The Redmond family history, anyway, claims Alexander defended the hall again in 1649 against Cromwell's forces.
How?
Supposedly using wool sacks piled against the walls to absorb cannon shots. It even ended up on their coat of arms later, that image.
Did it work? Did they keep the hall?
Well, the story gets a bit tangled. Initially, they might have gotten decent terms from Cromwell, allowed to keep some land. But ultimately, no. They were evicted. The Redmonds lost the hall.
And that's when the Loftus family steps in.
Pretty much. The Loftus family already had connections to the area. Sir Dudley Loftus got land grants way back in 1590.
Okay.
Then Nicholas Loftus bought more land nearby, and after the Cromwellian campaigns and the Redmonds were out, he eventually purchased Redmond's Hall itself.
So he bought it. But did they move in right away?
Not Nicholas. It was his son, Henry, who actually moved the family into the hall in 1666. And that's when it gets renamed Loftus Hall.
Ah, okay. 1666. Is that documented?
Yeah, there's apparently an inscription dated 1680 over at Porter's Gate marking it, though interestingly, people still called it Redmond's Hall for a while. Old names stick, you know.
They do. And they had to do repairs too, right? After all that fighting.
Oh, definitely. Records show repairs happening in 1684. It had clearly been through some turbulent times.
And the Loftus family themselves, they became quite important.
Very. They climbed the ranks of the aristocracy. Eventually, Charles Loftus became the first Marquis of Ely in 1800. A big deal.
What about the Redmonds? Did they just disappear from the story?
Not entirely. They did try to challenge the Loftus claim in court, but it didn't work. They did get some compensation, though, lands elsewhere in Wexford, in Ballaceen around 1684, and the family line continued. Some descendants famously became wild geese, soldiers serving abroad. Others stayed in Ireland and got involved in politics, like John Redmond, the famous Irish Parliamentary Party leader, centuries later.
So those old conflicts had really long-lasting effects on families.
Absolutely. Ripples through generations.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit. The hall we see in pictures today, the Grand Mansion. That wasn't the 1666 version, was it? There was a huge renovation later on.
A massive renovation. We're talking late 19th century, under the 4th Marquess of Ely, between about 1872 and 1884.
What prompted that?
Well, his mother, Lady Jane Hope Vere Loftus, seems to have been a driving force. They basically rebuilt large parts of it, keeping some of the old structure but making it much grander.
Grand how? What did they add?
Oh, all the bells and whistles for the time. A huge, impressive staircase, apparently the one you see today. Mosaic tiled floors, fancy parquet flooring.
Sounds expensive.
Extremely. And they put in modern conveniences too, flushing toilets.
Wow, in the 1870s, that was pretty cutting edge.
Oh yeah, and even blown air heating. They were really aiming high. Some accounts say they were inspired by Osborne House, Queen Victoria's place on the Isle of Wight.
Osborne House. So were they maybe hoping for a royal visit?
That seems to have been the rumor, or perhaps the ambition. Build a house fit for the Queen, maybe she'll pop by.
Did she?
Nope.
Yeah.
Never happened.
All that effort and expense.
Exactly. And tragically, the family didn't even get to enjoy their newly renovated palace for very long.
Why not?
The 4th Marquess died relatively young, and it seems the cost of the refurbishment might have left the estate in a bit of a financial hole.
Oh dear. So what happened to the hall then? Did the Loftus family lose it?
Eventually, yes, it changed hands. In 1917, it was bought by the Sisters of Providence.
Nuns. What did they use it for?
They ran it as a convent and also a school for girls for many decades. Quite a change from a Marquesan mansion.
Definitely a different vibe. And after the nuns?
Then in 1983, it was bought by the Devereux family, and they turned it into the Loftus Hall Hotel.
A hotel! Right, I think I remember hearing about that. Ran until the 90s.
Yeah, into the 1990s. So it went from private home to institution to tourist accommodation. Quite the journey.
And more recently, it's been in the news a bit, hasn't it?
It has. The Quigley family bought it in 2011. They did a lot of work and opened it up to the public in 2012 for tours.
Tours focusing on the history or?
Both history and, famously, the paranormal side. They ran ghost tours, overnight investigations. It even featured on shows like Ghost Adventures.
Ah, yes. Capitalizing on the spooky reputation.
Definitely. It was also used as a filming location. That gothic horror movie, The Lodgers, was shot there in 2016.
Right, so it was a tourist attraction for a while. Is it still?
It closed to the public in 2020, and then it was sold again in 2021. Last we heard, as of 2022, it was undergoing more renovations by the new owners.
Okay, so its future is still unfolding. You know, standing there on the Hook Peninsula, apparently you can see it clearly from the Hook Lighthouse. It's quite a landmark.
It really is. But you can't talk about Loftus Hall without diving into the ghost stories, can you? It's almost more famous for that than its actual history sometimes.
It really is, isn't it? Why do you think that particular legend, the main one, has stuck so firmly?
That's a good question. Maybe it's the mix of things. The storm, the mysterious stranger, the card game, the dramatic reveal, and the tragic figure of Anne.
Tell us the story. What's the classic version?
Okay, so the most famous legend is set around 1775. Charles Tottenham was living there then. He was related to the Loftus family through marriage. He was there with his second wife and his daughter from his first marriage, Anne.
And Tottenham. Okay.
So the story goes, one dark and stormy night. Classic start, right?
Yeah, of course.
A ship was seen struggling offshore, and later a lone horseman arrives at the hall seeking shelter. The family wasn't home, supposedly, but Anne welcomed him in. Some versions say the family was there. Details vary as they go.
Sure, so this stranger stays for a while.
Yes. He stays, and apparently he and Anne become quite close, maybe infatuated. Then one evening, they're all playing cards.
The whole family and the stranger.
Seems so. And Anne, maybe accidentally, drops a card. As she bends down to pick it up under the table, she sees something she shouldn't.
Which is?
The stranger has a cloven hoof instead of a foot.
The classic sign of?
The devil himself, or at least a demon. As soon as Anne cries out or reacts, The stranger reveals his true nature, maybe lets out a demonic yell, and then shoots up through the ceiling in a ball of fire.
Through the ceiling, leaving a hole.
Leaving a hole, exactly. A hole that legend says could never be properly repaired. He
Yeah.
kept reopening.
Wow, what a dramatic exit. But the story doesn't end there for poor Anne, does it?
No, that's the tragic part. The shock was apparently too much for her. The legend says she lost her mind, became severely mentally ill.
Oh, how awful.
Yeah. They end up locking her away in her favorite room, which was apparently the tapestry room.
Locked away.
That's the story. She'd just sit there, day after day, refusing to eat or drink much, just staring out the window towards the sea, maybe waiting for the stranger to come back.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. And she eventually died in that room. And the final really grim detail is that when she died, her body was supposedly rigid, maybe curled up in a sitting position from being in the chair or bed so long, and they couldn't straighten her out for a normal burial.
You're kidding.
Nope. So the story goes, she had to be buried still in that sitting position.
Good grief. That's an incredibly potent, haunting story. No wonder it stuck.
Exactly. It's got all the elements: mystery, romance, terror, tragedy.
And it's definitely captured people's imaginations over the years. Didn't someone make a documentary?
Yes, back in 1993, Rick Whelan made a documentary called The Legend of Loftus Hall, which helped keep the story in the public eye.
And there was talk of a feature film, too, wasn't there, for years?
Oh yeah, that was quite the saga. Started development around 2006, I think. Went through different writers, directors, even actors attached at various points. People like Keith Duffy, Samantha Moomba, Adelaide Clemens were mentioned over the years.
But it never quite got made.
It seems to have hit various production snags and delays. Last I heard, it might have been rebooted again, but it shows how compelling the story is that people kept trying to bring it to the big screen.
Definitely. And Loftus Hall's influence doesn't stop there, does it? It's popped up in literature, too.
That's a really interesting connection. Eoin Colfer, the author of the Artemis Fowl books.
Yeah.
He apparently worked at Loftus Hall Hotel when he was younger. And he said that Loftus Hall was the inspiration for Fowl Manor in his books.
No way. That's fantastic. So you can picture Artemis Fowl striding through those halls.
Sort of, yeah. And apparently it also influenced the design of Toad Hall in the 1983 animated film of The Wind in the Willows.
Toad Hall.
Seems so. The grandeur, maybe the slightly imposing look of it, it just shows how a real place with all its atmosphere and stories can seep into popular culture in unexpected ways.
That's brilliant. So, okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, we've really covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
They really have. From, Houseland Castle and the Redmonds, through the wars, the arrival of the Loftus family, their rise, and the massive rebuild.
Then the changes in the 20th century. The nuns, the hotel, the tourist attraction phase.
And all alongside this incredibly persistent, powerful ghost story that just refuses to fade away. Plus its links to books and films. It's quite a mix.
It really shows how one single place can just accumulate so many layers over time, doesn't it? Conflict, wealth, decline, folklore. It all merges together.
Exactly. It's the history of the architecture and the stories that give it its power, its identity today.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. Think about how places gather these stories, how history, myth, and just the passage of time create the character of a building or a landscape. You have to wonder what other places that seem ordinary on the surface might be holding on to equally amazing, surprising histories just waiting to be uncovered.